Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 180, and we are in chapters 51 through 58, ending part 4 of The Hero of Ages. Paul, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Excited. You always ask me, and I feel like I say the same thing, and so I'm buckling to that pressure that I just realized. So that's it. I'm good. I'm good. Maybe I'll come up with something cleverer next week.
More clever. Eliot, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm listening to the audiobook of Elantris right now. And today I had to stop at literally the climax of the book. In the dead center of what I'm 100% sure is the climax of the story. And so all day, I've been thinking about what's going to happen to Raoden and Sereni. So now I got to shift gears back into the other book that I'm reading, which is The Hero of Ages. But yes, pardon me if I drop any Elantris names on accident because I really got to know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes of that audiobook.
Yeah, I finished Elantris a couple weeks ago, but I can't imagine starting the part 5 of The Hero of Ages and part 3 of Elantris at the same time. That must be confusing.
Not the least, not the smallest bit confused also by the fact that one of the characters in Elantris, his name is Ash. And yeah, the Ash in Elantris and the Ash in Mistborn is confusing me.
All right. Let's get a brief summary from Eliot. But before we do that, let's roll intro on 51 through 58 of The Hero of Ages. Take it away when you're ready, Eliot.
All right. So chapters 51 and 58 through 58 take us to the end of part 4. And as you'd expect for a Brandon Sanderson book, quite a lot starts to happen at this stage in the story. So starting with chapter 51, Elend goes and gathers up a whole bunch more just to beef up his army, I guess. And by himself, he's kind of a one man. He's kind of a one man army himself now at this point with his newfound Mistborn powers. So demonstrating those, we get a brief glimpse of TenSoon in chapter 52 as he impersonates Kelsier, which is weird, and gathers some information, but maybe gets the wrong information because he heads north to Urteau to go try and find Vin, whereas we know Vin is not in Urteau. She's down at Fadric City, so he's headed the wrong direction. Chapter 53 takes us to Spook, who is in Urteau, and he is able to take Beldra. It's another name I can't
Yep, Beldra.
decide how it's pronounced. Beldra. He takes Beldra, who is Quellion, the citizen's sister, captive, and he's really kind of building momentum for his rebellion. We're getting to the breaking point with the rebellion that Spook is leading, along with Sazed and Breeze. Then, meanwhile, in chapter 54, these chapters jump around a lot. We're getting into the fast-paced part of it where we kind of jump from one character to the next. Chapter 54, Vin has been captured by Yeoman. She has no metals left. He's been able to purge her of all her metals, so she doesn't have her powers, and she learns that Yeoman is planning to execute her. At least that's what he says. Back over to Ellen in chapter 55. He has an encounter with the Spirit, which maybe is the Mist Spirit we've seen all this time. And we're told kind of through the epigraphs that spirit is reservation.
Yeah.
That Ellen has a conversation. Well, not really a conversation because they're not sharing words, right? The Mist Spirit is just kind of waving and flailing and pointing and trying to get its message across like charade style. I'm not sure we quite got the whole message, but there's at least some communication between Elend and Preservation. And then preservation dies right there, I guess.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It continues on with chapter 56 and back to Spook, who is trying to veal Quellion as an allomancer, and so just kind of building momentum more and more for the rebellion. Chapter 57 gets to Vin again. She's still trapped and imprisoned. She talks a lot with Ruin. She learns perhaps some more about Ruin, maybe starts to get the inklings of a plan on how to stop him. And then chapter 58 is back to Spook and Urteau with the big climax of this part and discovering a whole bunch of stuff that ends with Spook charging into a burning building to save the town, which was seemingly a very fitting and heroic death, maybe, for Spook. Pretty epic.
Survivor of the Flames is what he's called. But yes. They I can't wait for next episode when Ellen shows back up to Fadrex and says preservation is dead, but I'll see what I can do. I'm really looking forward to that line, but we'll have to wait till next episode. What are we most excited to talk about? Ellen, Vin, Spook. What do we got?
Well, I have a comment to make. So I don't know if this is where we want to start off or where we want to go, but I just need to get this off my mind. So Eliot mentioned in his summaries that there's the chapter where we realize that Ellen is gesturing with preservation, and then it is explained to us, the reader, that preservation dies and the body is there. If Ellen would have waited around, he would have found it,
Yep.
That was one of the moments the first time I read this book that I was just kind of baffled that this was what we were looking at, I guess. Like the death of the death of shards, but also the kind of humanity of shards and just all this going on. And this is one of the things that I was really kind of wanted to tell Eliot about, at this time, wanted to talk about this. This was one of those moments, not because I have any kind of crazy big brain theory or a huge takeaway or whatever, but I was just kind of in awe for a second of how cool this story is and how cool that we are getting to see this. It felt like something that if this was in Stormlight, I feel like it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been an insight that they would have given to the reader. I don't know. It just felt like too big of a. Maybe I'm making it too big, but that's just something that really kind of took me, just took me with it. I don't know what to say,
So, one thing that Brandon Sanderson says in his writing lectures for his creative writing class at BYU, one thing that he has said, and I'm not a writer and I don't intend to be a writer, but I watch them because I think they're interesting. One thing he said was, never save any of your ideas for a next book. It's okay to plan out a series, but if you have an idea for a single book, put everything you have into that one book. You will always have more content. You don't need to worry about saving your big punchline for book 3 or something. He always said, or he said in the class, put everything you have into the book you're writing right then, and you'll always come up with new content. Don't worry about that. And so I think with the death of preservation, that just calls back to me because the scope of what we're dealing with really hits home in that chapter. It's kind of hard to get your brain around exactly what's going on. Is Ruin going to accomplish what he's set out to do? There's a lot of doom and destruction, but it's all kind of vague. But when preservation drops dead in the ash, it's a good point of, wow, okay, we are in big trouble. So I just really liked that scene because it's a really good way to present the stakes of the story that you're in, closing out part 4 here.
It's been hard throughout the series of Mistborn, I think, to sometimes grasp what the stakes are.
Right.
It's been, and I'm biased, right? Because we started elsewhere in the Cosmere, so I'm coming in with expectations of being able to decipher the bigger picture. And so when we struggle with questions like, well, what does this mean for the entire planet? What does this mean for the rest of the Cosmere? What does it mean for shards? Being starved for that answer is a little weird, but then yes, these moments, I agree with you, are very hard hitting in that, because I'm just kind of left a little bit in awe, like, wait, did that just happen? Did that seriously just happen? Kind of moments.
Yeah, it took me this read of The Hero of Ages to really realize that we did in fact do it backwards, and you really are supposed to read The Hero of Ages before you read Stormlight, because a lot of the definitions that we get for like the greater Cosmere are in part 4 of The Hero of Ages. We get shards defined for us, we get cognitive, spiritual, and physical defined for us in this episode in the Epigraphs. We get, there's another, Adonalsium, of course. We get kind of referenced, not necessarily defined. That's more defined early in The Way of Kings, but it's first referenced here. So it's really, you really should read The Hero of Ages first, but there's no way we were going to, because I really wanted to get you guys to read Stormlight, so that's where we started.
Yeah. And this is mildly off topic, so I'm going to keep it really brief. But I'm like, I've recommended Brandon Sanderson books to several people, and it does depend on the person and just if I kind of know their interests or things. But I usually tell people to start in Stormlight. I've now read both series up to date. I mean, not Era 2 of Mistborn, but the standalone Era 1. And I enjoyed a lot more. It feels like there's a lot more kind of variety. Maybe the average person more people may be able to find what they would like in a story in Stormlight. And so I think it's a great place to start. But yeah, if you're going for the whole Cosmere picture, it probably is better to start with this and then go to Stormlight. Because on the first read through, if you don't have, if I didn't have this, I mean, I would know like a fourth of what I know just in those normal books, just normally reading it. So
It would be interesting in an alternate reality for us to start in Mistborn and try to watch Eliot figure out what a shard means. Because when shard is how did you learn about shards to begin with? Was it after we were done with Rhythm of War? Did I talk to you about it, or did I explain it before that?
You did a Cosmere 101 class.
Right, but that was
It
after
was-
Rhythm of War. No, it was
it was
before Rhythm.
after Oath. It was after Oathbringer, right?
You're right. It was between
I'm
Oathbringer and
pretty
Rhythm
sure
of
it was
War.
after Oathbringer. Yeah.
And
I think we did Oathbringer and then like Dawn Shard and then Words of Radiance. The 101, then Dawn Shard, then Words of Radiance. But it's kind of funny. I don't actually remember for sure on that. But either way, I think that's when we got our like set in stone definition.
yeah.
I think we'd obviously like heard that term before and stuff, but I think that was when, you made it more, made it more plain for us.
Yeah. Okay. The conversation between Elend and Preservation, or if you can even call it that, the only positive communication we get from the Mistspirit is, "I will kill you, death, death, death," scratched on the floor. And then Ellen says, "Well, that's comforting. Thanks for that." And then he realizes, wait a minute. Ruin is right here changing words as we speak. And that line really does hit home for me as a reader. Like, I know we've seen Ruin this whole part talking to Vin, but the fact that he's right here with Ellen, caring about what Ellen's doing, like going to get 30,000 Kolos apparently is important for Ruin to be paying attention to, because he's paying attention to Ellen and altering his conversation with the Mist Spirit, which, if the Epigraphs are to be believed, is preservation. So, interesting. So, Eliot, what did we learn from the Mist Spirit? What did he or it want Ellen to do or not want Ellen to do?
It's not 100% clear, even to me having read the epigraphs, which seem to be giving a kind of hindsight 2020 view of events. But it seems like preservation is trying to get Ellen to stop, to go the other way, to go home, sort of thing. That was kind of my only takeaway, was that it seems like preservation communicate, stop what you're doing, we go home to Luthadel. I wasn't 100% clear.
Yeah, the two main takeaways I think are: don't attack Fadrex, because Ellen asks him, or the spirit directly, and he waves his hand back, and or maybe stands still. I don't remember if it stands still for no or waves hands for no. I don't remember. But he asked, "Do you want me to attack Fadrex?" The spirit says no, and then the last question Ellen asks is, "Can we beat it? Can we win against Ruin?" And it hesitates, and then it like waves just briefly, and then evaporates into the wind all dramatically. So those are our two main takeaways: is don't attack Fadrex, and you can win, but it wasn't sure about it.
It sure doesn't feel like we could win at this point. Even with the small amounts of information that Vin is getting directly out of Ruin, I still don't see any path to victory here. It seems like we have hints that maybe TenSoon knows something that would help us, or Zayzed could come across, something secret to help. But it just looks like Ruin is in complete control. Or anything you do is just going to help Ruin.
Right.
We can fight each other, but that just creates chaos, which is exactly what Ruin is going for. I don't see a way out of this cul-de-sac.
That's what he wants you to think. That's
I'm sure he
exactly what
does.
everyone wants you to think, is he's in complete control, and anything you're gonna do is just gonna help him. But I do agree with you. It's like kind of really defeating, especially at the end of Well of Ascension. And there was maybe another time in there where they're like doing what they believe is gonna be the right thing, and they're like figuring something out, but really it's just kind of an elaborate trap set up so that they help Ruin out. It's kind of nuts.
Well, and let's talk about Ruin and preservation for a second, actually, because we have started to gather up a fair amount of information from our epigraphs, which I'm still, by the way, on epigraphs, very unsure about who the author of those is.
Mm-hmm.
We've had them consistently throughout the entire book, seeming to come from a single point of view, but who is that point of view? Who is the person who is like analyzing and dissecting the events of this entire book in retrospect for us in the epigraphs? Anyway,
Unfortunately, the hero of ages. They told you.
Apparently, as of the first one. Although, as I've learned, anything written on anything not metal is suspect already. So, the fact that it's written on paper tells me I can't trust it. Anyway.
Oh, maybe the only one who's left at the end of this. Maybe Ruin is the hero of ages.
Oh,
yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah,
there's a theory.
It does also explain why y'all's versions are so different.
True.
He's trying to get each of y'all to do specific things, So he's tailored them against you.
the information that we do get in the epigraphs is put together some pictures for us. It talks about ruin and preservation specifically. It talks about them, working against each other, but kind of sometimes working with each other. It sounds like they work together to create humans, at least in some amount. And then it talks about this pact that ruin and preservation have made this pact. And I think it's even mentioned at one point that preservation is the one who breaks the pact. Preservation is the one who decides to go against the agreement to not defeat each other or try to defeat each other, and kind of gets into the analysis of preservation knew that he couldn't stop ruin. He's preservation. He can't destroy you. He can just preserve. And so to take down the enemy, he needs something else. And so to come up with a different plan or make a gamble. I want to say one of the epigraphs even mentioned the word gambit. They took a risk. They took kind of a path, I guess, a strategy to try and take Ruin down, and we're seeing that play out, I guess.
Yeah. The stakes of the epigraphs, if they're to be trusted, are quite high at the end of part 4 here. We're talking about the original pact of ruin and preservation, and then it skips towards modern day of I'm not sure why preservation was talking to Elend in chapter 55. But we do get some really interesting insight into ruin versus preservation and the rules that are laid out between them, because I mean, by the end of this episode, preservation is dead, and all we have is ruin. I think Elend even thinks to himself in chapter 55 is when the Miss Spirit walks up to him and says, "Are you on our side or are you on their side? Are you gonna solve all of our problems?" And then he thinks to himself, "No, because that would be too easy, and if that were the case, then it would have already happened. So I've got to figure this out for myself." So the fact that there's only one, I'm going to use the term vessel left on Scadrial and not the term shard, because I don't think preservation is gone. I think the vessel for preservation is gone. And if that distinction confuses anyone who hasn't read Stormlight, don't worry about it. It'll be okay.
While we're talking about shards and ruin and preservation specifically, probably worth jumping to a comment that you put in an outline here, Trevor, about what ruin is claiming to be, or the motive behind ruin. We're getting more and more. Ruin likes to monologue. He's a classic villain who needs affirmation or is prideful or likes to both. Whatever it is, Ruin, or maybe he's more sneaking than that. I don't know. Ruin has been laying some things out to Vin, and he kind of sometimes sounds a little rational, or occasionally you kind of tempted to see his side of things where he just says, "Well, all things have to end. I'm just the caretaker that sees out the end of all things." And there's a few moments where you're almost like, "Oh," and then you think about what exactly all that means and quickly go back to, wait, no, hold on a second.
I'm just the last page of the book. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. He actually does an impressive job of kind of making you sympathize or like see his side, I guess, if you will. And I have to say, I think that's what, in my head, one of the things that makes a really good villain, I think, is that of like understanding their motivation. Like, yes, I would say he's evil, but any villain has their own motivation for why they're doing what they're doing. Very few is it out of like a spite or something like that, or like doing it just for the sake of doing wrong. It's usually for personal gain or whatever, or what they believe to be right. And I think this actually does a wonderful job of showing that, of showing like an argument, if you will, that we can even relate to a little bit, or potentially see a purpose in, see the thought process there, and actually like tie a little skin to it, a little emotion to it, you know. Whereas like a lot of villains, it's easy to just be like, no, you're just always wrong all the time. Like we actually get a little bit of interesting perspective, which I really, really like, adding a little bit of that complication. We've talked before about complicated villains and that villains don't need to be complicated, they can just be evil. I think this toes a really fine line of he is just evil, but we see the motivation behind it, if it will. It's not like oh, he was hurt a long time ago and that's why he turned out bad. Like he is just bad. He is just bad here, but there's a little bit of, you know, the motivation behind what he does makes you think a little bit, and I think that's really cool, and I wanted to point that out.
I just realized as you were talking there, Paul, that kind of ties back to our perception of the villains earlier in the series. I think I said, I forget how early, that the Inquisitors were a very black and white evil. There was no question about it. The Inquisitors just enjoy pain and killing and destruction. And you could easily group them in a category of evil with no questions whatsoever about whether it's a gray area. I now look back on that and see there's a whole nother layer to what I was talking about that of course I had no idea, but we've just arrived at it. We've now gotten to the source of that. We've gotten to ruin, and the Inquisitor is just an appendage, just a pawn in ruins actions. And so the effects of what's going on are evil, black and white. But the motives of the source behind it all, not black and white. There's more to think about, like you're just talking about. There's more to be dissected about why there's all this pain and suffering and destruction. So we just had to go a couple levels higher to get to complex evil. It's all the way at the fingertips that it's the simple evil.
Something that I think is a strength of Sanderson and the Cosmere that he's created. Here comes minor spoilers, vague general spoilers for other Cosmere works. We can have base level bad guys like that are pure evil, like Ellen's Straff Venture or Sadius or Amram. Like there's a little bit of dimension to some of those, but not a whole lot at the end of the day. But in the grand scheme of things, it's really interesting to set up a universe where there's 16 forces spread out around the universe. And what happens when you pull number 2 and number 8 together, and number 2 just wants this thing, and number 8 just wants this thing. And if you put those two together, what would happen? And then if you combine that with the flaws of the vessel, like the human nature of the vessel or dragon or whatever it is, the flaws of a mortal being, and have it hold that and be corrupted by that, what does that mean for the common Vin or Paladin? Or, you know, I think that's a really cool idea, that let's have this cosmic being and this cosmic being fighting, and then what would that do to the world? I think that's a cool concept for a book.
It allows us to explore simpler, rather straightforward kind of facets of or stories. Then it allows for so many layers of overlapping complexity.
Right.
When you start to bring in the magic system from this shard, plus the magic system of that shard, plus the motives of this vessel, plus the heroic save the day of this hero, there's so many different possibilities in there, and that's what we get with Cosmere is not only are we going to explore all of these different things, then we're going to go see what happens when you overlay all of those lines in the tapestry, all those threads together. It's really fascinating.
And I have to point out, I really like what I think is especially true of what you were saying, Trevor. Of it's kind of like Brandon Sanderson has written all of these parts individually, you know, and whenever you put two of them in a place, right? You put, like you said, number 2 and number 8 or whatever, and they want this thing, they want this thing, you know, like seeing how that unfolds, seeing what that does. That's exactly how all of his characters are written, and I really appreciate it. We can practically predict if you took character X and put them in a room with character Y, we kind of know what the conversations may look like, what things may look like. They're just well fleshed out characters, and we understand how they operate in a lot of different lights. That is, I would say more so in Stormlight, but I would say that in pretty much all of his books, they're very well done. And I just think that's a really wonderful part of his writing because it lets you really run with the ball of possibility of guesstimating and what if so and so is here, you know, what if so and so did this. Like you would kind of be able to really tell what characters may or may not do and stuff like that. And I just think that's really a really cool element of just how his stories are, how the Cosmere is, I would say.
Yeah. Eliot, earlier in the episode, you mentioned TenSoon. TenSoon goes to Luthadel and puts on Kelsier's bones, walks around the city, kind of on purpose, but also kind of on accident. One of the interactions is purposeful. The second he accidentally walks into the churches of the survivor as Kelsier. But what does he tell the Ska? What's the command he gives as Kelsier to the Ska of Luthadel?
Ever since I saw you wrote this in the outline, I've been trying to think of it because I didn't note it down and I'm not recalling it, which usually when this kind of thing happens means I missed something important.
Mm-hmm. So he orders the 2 guards at the front of Keep Venture to gather the Church of the Survivor, gather as many Skas will come, and go seek shelter underground. Okay?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the guard says, "Oh, where you trained your army? The tunnels outside of Luthadel? I don't remember what they're called." And TenSoon says, yeah, definitely what I meant. I definitely knew that existed. Yes, go there." And then he accidentally walks into the Church of the Survivor, and he gives an even more cryptic message to them. He says, "Seek shelter underground. Go to the 2 guards at the opening of Keep Venture. They'll know where to go. When the mists disappear, be sure you are underground." Does your version say that? I just want to make sure.
I was flipping through to try and find it. I think I'm at the section. It looks like it does. Yeah, tell the people that when the mists leave, they should immediately find shelter, a place underground if possible.
There you go.
Yeah, I must have been reading fast. I didn't even notice that. I think my brain might have even read it the opposite. When the mists appear, get underground and hide or something like that. I read right past that.
So what do you think?
What do I think?
TenSoon knows
What?
something.
Well, the Khandra apparently know all the things and are sharing. When the mists leave, who cares about when the mists leave? That's what we're trying to get to, right? Is fix the world and get rid of the ash and get rid of the mists. Why do we need to hide when the mists leave? Yeah, I don't know.
I'll let you brew on that one. Any input, Paul? I'm sure you remember, but any input?
Well, I was gonna say it's actually because whenever the world clears up again, right? these people haven't seen much sunshine or anything like that. So they need to be underground because they're gonna actually get horribly sunburnt
Oh, okay.
if everything clears up and they're above ground. I mean, they haven't seen this. Most of these people haven't. I mean, all these people haven't seen the sun in their life. You know, I mean, it's just
Isn't
it's just for their safety.
isn't that exactly the end of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter? Doesn't they actually get sunburn? I think that's in the book. That spoilers, sorry for Yumi and the Nightmare Painter.
Yep. Major lower Cosmere breaking spoiler. Someone gets sunburned.
Somebody
I
gets
don't actually
sunburned
remember
at the
that.
end of Yumi
I
and the
just
Nightmare
know
Painter.
that it's like I could see that there may be scenes where that happens because Painter is very averse to warmth and sunshine and such.
Right.
So maybe he does. Who knows?
Anything else for Vin, Ellen, Preservation, Ruin, TenSoon before we go over to Spook?
I was just about to ask if we could talk about Spook. So
Oh, I have one thing for you. I had a funny thought in one of the chapters that I had to share with you guys. Vin is in prison. Yeoman has captured her. She has no medals. He tries to take the screws out of her bed to try and get metal, and lo and behold, they're actually silver because Yeoman thought about that, so he knows that she can't use silver. Yada yada yada. She's trying to figure out, how do I get a message to Ellen? And she realizes that despite not having any medals, she still has connection to the Koloss that she has control of. And so at one point, she tries to see if she could control a Koloss to get a message to Ellen. Ultimately, she figures out that level of control about them. I can just kind of give them direction, and they just kind of know what to do with it. I instantly had a thought in that moment of, picture this. Here's how Ben could get a message to Ellen. Marching band.
A Koloss marching band. Yes, indeed.
Koloss
I thought of this as well.
marching band. All she's got to do is get the Koloss to walk around and form the shapes of the letters or pictures of the message she wants to communicate. And Ellen walks out of his tent in the morning and, good morning. Oh, look at those Koloss. They're in funny shapes. Wait a second. It says "Hi, Ellen" on the ground with the entire army of Koloss. Like, problem solved. There we go. We can communicate through giant Koloss marching bands.
Brandon Sanderson, we have broke your magic system. We can communicate through Koloss. Yes.
Come on, Ben.
As you put the I have an idea in the outline, I did think of that is well, wait a minute. You could spell out some letters with a marching band.
Yep, exactly. So I'm disappointed that Vin did not think of that.
She probably didn't play trombone in high school. All right.
we don't need to go down this rabbit trail. We need to talk about Spook, but it would actually be kind of fun to, think of all these characters as members of a band, either like a an actual like rock band or like a orchestral band, and pick who'd play what instrument.
Oh yeah.
We'll make a little bonus episode about that or something. Anyways,
Leave us some comments. Hop on our YouTube video and leave us some comments on what instruments Ellen and everybody plays.
Clubs is definitely a baritone. I can't explain why. Rest in peace, Clubs.
Sazed is a percussionist, I believe.
Ellen plays trumpet. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Sazed plays specifically like the bass drum, but one of the like smaller bass drums.
Okay.
Maybe timpani and
Yeah.
in concert season.
Hindwell is the conductor.
Ooh.
Anyway, Spook. He saved the day. He did it. He rips the spike out of his own shoulder. He pins Quellion down and rips the spike out of his shoulder. I don't remember where Quellion's spike is. But yep, that's the end of part 4. Anything else for the episode, gentlemen? I'm just kidding.
I'm curious to ask Eliot, did you have any? So I know we've talked about Spook having the spike in him. We've talked about that probably multiple times. Did you think that he would rip it out? Did you think he would come to that conclusion and do it?
Well,
I didn't think that would happen.
Eliot predicted that he'd go full Inquisitor. He predicted the other
That's
way
true.
and that he'd fall. So
I was fully on board sticking with that prediction all the way until this chapter. I did not think Spook was going to turn it around. I did not think he was going to be able to overcome that desire for power that really was starting to overtake him. And I thought he was going to go all in, add more spikes to himself, fall victim to that desire for more, that addiction that we've talked about. But it appears, at least in this chapter, he does the complete opposite. He realizes that he's being controlled and manipulated. He realizes that Quellion is being controlled and manipulated the same way, and he does the very difficult and painful thing. Description of it's kind of gory as well. He's got a spike in him, but his body's like healed over it,
mm.
so he has to like carve it out of himself and pull that spike, and he does it. And then on top of all that, he goes charging into the flaming building. Like this was just epic Spook moments all around.
Spook is pretty cool, especially after this chapter. He lived up to Heir of the Survivor, assuming that he survived. Well, I guess the Survivor died doing his epic move, so maybe he fulfilled the Kelsier's legacy.
That's a fair point.
I do think it's funny, though, that Spook is titled Survivor of the Flames, and then at the end he deliberately does what Kelsier doesn't like, what Kelsier's telling him not to do. At what point does he realize it's not Kelsier?
I don't know. I feel like he's gonna have to talk to Ellen or Vin or someone before he realizes that.
Yeah.
That's
I
kind
think
of
by
the
the end of
scary thing of Ruin is that Spook has no reason. I mean, within reason, Spook has no reason to think that's not Ellen. I guess, especially Ellen. Sorry, not Ellen. Kelsier.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen. Sorry, once again, Kelsier. Is very deified. There's a whole religion about him, so maybe there's a more weight to him hearing Kelsier's voice. But like, for average person aside, like, if you hear a voice of someone who's, I don't know, very, I guess, dear to you, very fond, like, you know, very special to you for a long time, like, with average knowledge, I feel like you're not jumping to this is some crazy greater power thing that wants to destroy the world. You're like, try to figure out how the person that you knew and loved is talking to you, I guess. I don't know. I think this seems like a really dangerous tool that Ruin has to me on like the average person. Like Ven catches on to it, some of our other people catch on to it because they have more of that, I guess, just a bit more like Cosmere aware minds. You know, they have just have more knowledge about it. But I feel like this is like talking to someone as a specific person is such a manipulative and powerful tool to the unexpected, you know, that it's really scary to me. So, anyways, but you know, whatever y'all were saying, I think I cut Eliot off. Whoops.
But no, good thoughts all around. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Spook's gotten all the way to where he knows exactly what was manipulating him, but I think it was clear by the end of this chapter that Spook knew something was wrong. And maybe it came with the realization that Quellion was also getting manipulated. Doesn't Isn't there a point where Quellion like turns and acknowledges that's there? Am I imagining that? I don't remember.
There may be. Oh, yes. The Kelsier's spirit, whatever, reacts to something that Spook does, and Quellion sees it.
That's vaguely what I recall as well. Some kind of interaction where Spook realizes, wait a second, this voice person who's influencing me that no one else can see is also apparent to Quellion, jump, and is controlling, influencing him as well. Wait a second, what's going on here? And enough of the pieces fell into place that I think he realized that he needed to act against that being. Has he gotten all the way to figuring out what was going on? Probably not.
Right. Okay. He has a conversation with Beldra before that grand scene, and Beldra tells him, "You really need to be careful with power. Power has destroyed my brother. I've seen his fall over these last couple months. You try to save him and save yourself because power is not all that." And I think that's the conversation that saves Spook and kind of snaps him out of it, because without that conversation, I think that Spook wouldn't have come through. But because he likes Beldra, and you take into consideration the words of girls you like, go Beldra.
Who, by the way, is an allomancer?
Oh yeah, she's a coin shot, I believe.
That one caught me by surprise. Spook was spending this whole time trying to reveal Quellion as an allomancer because in fights or whatever that he was in, he knew he was being influenced by an allomancer and just assumed it was Quellion, I guess.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, it was Beldra behind Quellion the whole time. Allomancy.
I'm glad that surprised you, because that very surprised me on the first read through. It was reading it the second time. I did definitely remember this part. This was something that stuck out to me, and so watching all the scenes unfold as I went through it this time, it was kind of like, whenever you're watching a movie and you know that the person is, going the wrong way or whatever, and you just want to like yell at them to stop what they're doing. Like, watching a car crash and you can't look away, kind of thing. And that's kind of how this felt to me this time, because I knew it was coming.
See, Eliot, even if I accidentally spoil, big spoilers for you with Spook, there's still little nuggets in here that you can genuinely be surprised by. So there you go. You said something last book about how you assumed that the Kandra wouldn't kill each other. And then you said, this was with the reveal that TenSoon was actually Orsur, and TenSoon took Orsur's place, and that you made the assumption that Kandra were all on the same side and they wouldn't kill each other. And then you said, but I'm sure that's nowhere stated. So that type of framework just kind of sums up Sanderson's gotchas. Is yes, we all just assumed that Quellion was the coin shot, and that was a very easy conclusion to show up to, but at no point did we actually see proof of that. We kind of just assumed it.
And for me, that's the sign of a twist well done.
Yeah.
Author is they let you as the reader make assumptions and try to figure out the story, and maybe just let you figure it out wrong so they can reveal the truth to you later. What I don't like in a story is when an author intentionally misleads you. When you go back and read it a second time and you see the author laying down hints in the wrong direction so that you can twist you later. That feels fake to me when an author does that. And Brandon has
there's a pretty bad one in the Way of
almost never
Kings.
done that.
There's a pretty bad one in the Way of Kings. Do you remember it? I mean,
I do.
I'll reference it behind a Stormlight spoiler in a second. But
The one I can reference here now, as it's in Mistborn, and we talked about it at the end of book one, the Final Empire was, and you've challenged me to reread and revisit my opinion, but the whole Kelsier planned to die the whole time
Yeah.
twist. That one felt a little bit contrived because we were in Kelsier's head for quite a bit of the story, at least
Right.
some parts. And so the fact that we were getting glimpses into Kelsier's private thoughts, and yet those thoughts did not reveal or maybe even tried to provide hints in other directions, that felt slightly contrived to me, which is why I didn't like that twist. And we talked about that at the end of book one. But I think you directly challenged me to maybe go back and read and maybe uncover some hints that I didn't notice that are there that could lead you down that path. So I'm trying to not be too harsh with that, and maybe on a reread, reevaluate that. But on a first read, that one felt a little fake.
What about a theme for part 4? We've just ended part 4.
This was the easiest part of a book theme I think I've ever come up with. It was instantly apparent. It requires no explanation. The theme of part 4 is destruction. There is a lot of destruction.
Death. What are our themes for the 4 parts of the Hero of Ages so far? Like despair, like destruction. I don't remember the other 2, but we've had some cheery themes for this book so far.
I was gonna
I think
say,
chemology was one of them.
just
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look.
I just remember back in other books whenever it was like things like hope.
Yes.
I don't know, hope, faith, perseverance,
Yeah.
all these like positive themes. And here we are, destruction.
Hey.
You know why. I don't need to tell you.
But hey, the title of part 5, anyone know it? Of this book? It's Trust.
Ooh, there we go.
So maybe there's something there. Okay.
That is one of the biggest overlaying themes. So I'm glad I didn't actually realize that. I'm glad part 5 is labeled Trust.
Just very briefly, Stormlight spoiler that I was talking about earlier. One of the bad misdirections that I think Sanderson has in The Way of Kings, Dalinar, before he realizes what's going on with the flashbacks, asks the Almighty, "Can I trust Sadeas?" And the Almighty says, "Yes, this is important. Act in faith and you will be rewarded," or something like that. That's not the exact quote. But we then learn at the end of the book that they're just pre-recorded messages. And that line really does not fit the pre-recorded message. That the yes is very out of place. So that's just one that came to mind when you said deliberate misdirections. Anyone want a Stormlight refresher?
Always.
Paul, you are trailing 4-1 in Eliot's favor. Are you going to pull it back this week?
There's been a lot of close calls, so hopefully tonight is the night that the balance tips maybe a little bit.
I know it's
a little bit.
So for all of our listeners, it'll only have been a week. But for us, it was more like a month. But I just wanted to remind you that last time we recorded, you blew the easiest trivia question on the planet. So it really should be 4-2, but it's not.
I know. It'd be 3-2, right? If I had gotten that.
No, because Eliot got it.
4-1.
Eliot got it, so he tied. So neither of you got a point.
That's right. Okay, never mind. Whoops.
And
well, looks like he walked off, so I think I win by default.
Eliot has forfeited the match.
Yes, 4-2. All right, that's it. We'll take it.
We're good. Let's go.
Okay,
I'm ready.
4-1 in Eliot's favor. Paul, you lead with a chapter name. Give me the brief summary of what happens in the chapter. You ready?
I'm already laughing. Yes, I'm ready.
Great art.
Great art.
And this is not a Yumi chapter. This is a Stormlight chapter.
I'm going to go with this is the chapter where in Words of Radiance, yes, Words of Radiance, when Shallan draws all of her little crewmates as something better, and it kind of bolsters them to exemplify a little bit of their exemplary drawings. That's my guess.
Incorrect.
I am proud of that guess, regardless. I didn't know didn't think that would necessarily be correct, but I'm proud either way. That's what I'm settling for in this trivia.
I'm
nowadays.
proud of my incorrect answer.
Yeah.
When you're ready, Elliot.
Great art. The epilogues don't have titles, right? They're just epilogue. Because
I will not confirm or deny that.
ooh, okay, tricky. There's an epilogue where Hoyd rambles about like the value of art or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Like what brings value to art, or there's a Hoyd discussion about that.
Yeah, it's on my board somewhere.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's one of your quotes. I think it's in an epilogue.
The only way
But I think the epilogues don't have names. I think it's just epilogue.
to create something that nobody hates is to ensure that it can't be loved either. Remove enough spice from soup, and you'll just end up with water.
Yeah, that's either in a monologue to Shalon in like Oathbringer or something like that, or it's epilogue. I think it's an epilogue, but I think the epilogues don't have names, so I think it's not that. So great art must be. I feel like it's misdirection here on Shalon, and that it's not Shalon and it's somebody else. It's a Renarin chapter. He's kind of artsy ish, kinda. And Renarin is spinning on stuff and coming up with great ideas, and somebody's like, no, that's great art, it's not that. Yeah.
Whew, okay.
I think he's right.
Okay. I've had some good poker faces over the years. This was not one of them. Eliot, you'll be grieved to know that the epigraphs do indeed have titles, and you were correct that the epilogue of Oathbringer is titled Great Art, and Hoyd is monologuing to a beggar next to him in a food line at Kolinar about what makes great art.
I had it.
You did.
He was way more close than I thought he was gonna be. Just the thought went around a ways, and I was like, oh, okay, it'll be somewhere random we don't remember. That's tough. I'm sorry. I also didn't think that epigraphs, the epilogues had names, so that's harsh.
Yep. Now you know. Alrighty. Eliot, to you for your quote ID. It is worse when they think they are your friend. They make assumptions. They think they know you. Then start to expect things from you. Then you have to be the person everyone thinks you are, not the person you actually are.
Oh, this could be a lot of things. This feels like a Paladin to Shalon heart to heart. Maybe like in the chasm when they carve a slit in the side of the wall to escape the floods in the cavern, and the chasm fiend goes by, and really epic scenes, by the way. That one's kind of engraved in my memory. They talk about they have a heart to heart there. I'm gonna go with that. I don't know who it's who to who. I'm gonna say Shalon to Kaladin.
Incorrect.
Okay. And are we just supposed to know who the speaker is?
All you need to know is who the speaker is.
Okay. Well, then can you reread the quote, because I thought it was Shalon as well. So I'm gonna need to rethink.
It is worse when they think they are your friend. They make assumptions. They think they know you. Then start to expect things from you. Then you have to be the person everyone thinks you are, not the person you actually are.
The thought I'm hung up on right now is that this is some way related to Bridge 4.
Okay.
Whether that's correct or not is Okay. Um, I could see this being like a flashback Kaladin and TN when they're young thing, but that seems too profound. I'm gonna go that this is Moash to Kaladin in like the early Way of Kings stuff, Bridge 4 stuff. So that's what I'm gonna go with.
Incorrect. Here's
I
the
saw your little
reply.
nod. I was like, nope.
The nod of
was
no.
wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, yep. You're like, interesting.
Yes.
Nope. Yeah.
Imagining scenes that never happened. Yes. Interesting. All right. Eliot, here's the reply. So, who is the person you actually are? Lift?
Lift was on my list of ideas, but she was like fifth. Who I was gonna run through. Okay. Lift. Goodness. Is this one of those? Is this one of those like kind of out of place scenes where Lift pops up and has like a deep conversation with like Dalinar?
In the visions?
It is, isn't it? She just like pops in, serious stuff is going on, and Lift is like the comedic brevity, and then says something pithy like this. I don't know where this happens, but she's having a random out of place conversation with Dalinar.
Incorrect.
Eh.
So the response was like to Lift, right?
Correct.
Am I overthinking this? Do I just need to know that Lift was the original speaker, or is
Lift-
there more?
Lift was the original speaker.
Okay, so I just need to know who she's speaking to now.
Right. Who said the response?
Okay. I mean, I'm just gonna go with guess number one in my brain, which was Wendell. That sounds basic. Is the companion of Lift, but Wendell.
Correct. You are correct. This is a random rant between Lift and Wendell, one of their many, in Edge Dancer.
I was thinking about the whoever the other kid was
Gox.
in Edge Dancer, and I was like, I don't know the name, so I'm just gonna go with the name I know. Anyways.
All right. 1-0 for Paul. Here comes your review. All right. This book is okay. The story is okay. The characters are okay. There's nothing really amazing. Everything is just okay. The one thing that dropped this from a blank to a blank was the dialogue. I'm fairly certain that at some point, Sanderson got tired of writing and gave this book to his teenage son to finish. The characters are supposedly clever and witty. One character is even named Wit. I liked Hoyd in previous books, but in this, he is clever in the way a toddler is clever. In parentheses, extremely annoying. The characters all have dialogue, especially Shallan, that is supposed to show off how sharp-witted they are. But genuinely, the dialogue is full of things my friends and I said to each other when we were 13. The dialogue between three of the main characters is sophomoric at best.
Sophomoric. What a word. Okay. I'm pretty confident I know the book. I'm pretty confident that this is The Way of Kings. And he's talking about, he's read. I'm not going to say anymore. I think I'm going to go with The Way of Kings. The rating is the harder part. In my head, it could be anywhere between maybe two or 3 stars, maybe 4. The way he talked about it on and on makes me think it's not 4 stars. Whenever it started, I thought maybe 4 out of 5. So it's got to be like 1 to 3. I'm gonna go with 2 out of 5 stars. The Way of Kings. That's my final answer.
Eliot.
I think there's a lot of clues in that review. It talks about Brandon's teenage son. His children are not that old
Correct.
now in 2024. So I'm gonna guess this is not an earlier work because I don't think his kids were teenagers at that
Wow.
time. Is his
Getting really
kids
meta.
Yeah,
here.
meta
Like,
were
answer
only
here.
recently teenaged? If even, are they even?
This is-
this is like
This is bold of you to assume that this person was thinking that hard. And just
that was gonna be my follow thought. Is yes, I'm assuming that this person knows what they're talking about, which they're trashing a Sanderson novel, so they potentially don't. But I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with the line of thought there. It's a later Stormlight book. It's gotta be Stormlight because they talk about wit. So this has gotta be. I almost want to say Rhythm of War. This is Rhythm of War, which does get rather dialogue-y at a lot of times. I enjoyed it. This person clearly didn't. This is Rhythm of War. The rating is a 2 out of 5.
Eliot, you will be grieved to know that this rating was written in 2017.
Okay.
And this is a 1 out of star review for Words of Radiance. I don't know how you can say the book is okay and give it 1 out of 5, but
It's whenever he continued on from that okay made me think 4 or 5 stars. Like, it was good, but not my favorite. But then he went on to really trash it and say the dialogue was horrible. It was like it was written by a 13-year-old. Whatever.
Alrighty, 1-0 to Paul, and Eliot gets this trivia question first. At the end of The Way of Kings, the Parshendi exclaim Neshua Kadal as Kaladin leaps over the chasm as he's sucking in Stormlight. Kaladin assumes this is an expletive, but later in the series this is translated for us. What does Neshua Kadal mean?
Oh man. Vaguely familiar, but not recallable. What does Neshua Kadal? I feel like this is something that maybe Relaine would have explained at some point, perhaps. What would he have said it means? Night Radiant? We're gonna go for it.
You are correct. They exclaim Night Radiant in surprise as he leaps over the chasm, and you've tied it 1-1. No points this week.
Man. I will say that's an excellent trivia question. That was a really good one. That was just cool. I had no idea. And it was just really cool. So Neshua Kadal. I think I'll remember that now.
We will reconvene next week, still 4-1 in favor of Eliot. Thanks for joining me.
Okay.
Peace.